I might as well admit it, I am a musical mess. I cannot sing very well, and I have no rhythm whatsoever. Let me illustrate that. Several years ago, when I was the associate at Bartlett Methodist Church, it was my responsibility in worship, as with our associates, to lead the liturgy in worship. And one of the responsibilities I had as liturgist was to announce the opening hymn. And typically, after announcing that hymn, I would step back from the microphone so I wasn't singing into it. Well, on one occasion, I forgot to step back. And so there we are singing the first hymn, and I'm singing directly into the microphone. We weren't 2 verses into that hymn until I started hearing snickering coming from the choir. It's a true story. And the choir then was a lot closer than the choir is here. So we're singing this hymn, and I hear them snickering behind me, and later was just surprised they didn't break out into just full laughter. That wasn't nearly as embarrassing at Bartlett as the time that we had the noted bass singer James Hyder come. All of you know the name James Hyder. We had him come that Sunday morning as a soloist, and it was my responsibility to offer a brief introduction for him. So Ed Sharp, who was the music director, had written out a statement for me to make in introducing Dr. Hyder. And Ed had written out, "We welcome this morning the great bass singer, Dr. James Hyder." Well, he had placed that on the lectern, and again, it was my responsibility to make that announcement, so I simply read what Ed had written. And I made the announcement, "We welcome this morning the great bass singer, Dr. James Hyder." Some years later, when we were at Broadway in Paducah, during the anthem, my daughter, our daughter, who is now 29 and was then a teenager, turned to Pat and said, "Mom, would you tell Dad not to tap his feet during the anthem? It's embarrassing." She said, "He has no rhythm. He can't keep the tempo." And I was very visible to the congregation then. And she said, "Mom, it's just so embarrassing." Let me tell you, I may be a musical mess, but I do understand the power of music and song for the Christian faith and for our lives as Christian believers. And so it's my joy this morning to celebrate the power of music and song. Let me share 4 insights. First of all, God's people have always sung. God's people have always sung. Did you know that the oldest piece of biblical literature is a song? That when scholars go back to the passages found in the Bible and seek to date those, that the oldest piece of biblical literature, dated by scholars, is a song. It's called the Song of Moses and Miriam, and it's found in the 15th chapter of the book of Exodus. The Israelites have just crossed over from the Red Sea, and the Red Sea has consumed Pharaoh and his army. And what's the first thing they do, according to Exodus 15, when they get on the other side? They sing a song. Moses leads them in singing, and they sing, as found in that text, "I will sing to the Lord, for He is highly exalted. Both horse and driver He has hurled into the sea." How about the book of Psalms? You do realize, don't you, that the book of Psalms is the songbook of the Hebrew people? That out of those 150 poetic pieces, that many, if not most, were written as songs for the Hebrew people to sing, along with instrumental music such as a harp. Actually, the word psalm, translated into English from the Greek psalmos, in Hebrew literally means song of praise. So when you open that beautiful book of Psalms, you are actually opening the hymn book of the Hebrew people. Did you know Jesus sang? There's a moving text found in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark. It's after the Last Supper. Jesus has gathered with His disciples, had supper with them, as you know, commemorated the Passover, and then Matthew and Mark both say, when they had sung the hymn, when Jesus and His disciples had sung a hymn, then He went to the Mount of Olives. God's people have always sung. Secondly, I would remind you that we Methodists have certainly been a singing people. We Methodists have certainly been a singing people. You do know, I think, that John and Charles Wesley are the founders of Methodism. You may know that Charles Wesley was a great hymn writer and that he wrote over 6,000 hymns, many of which are in our hymnal, some of which are our most favorite. We sang this morning, "Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing." Charles Wesley wrote that. On Easter Sunday, our favorite Easter hymn is what? "Christ the Lord is risen today." Charles Wesley wrote that. He also wrote "A charge to keep I have, love divine, all loves excelling," which we just sang. "Spirit of faith, come down." Methodists have always sung. Did you know that John Wesley had 5 rules for singing for Methodists? Let me share 3 of those with you because they apply to modern Methodists as much as they did to those early Methodists. 3 rules for singing for Methodists. First of all, sing all. That means everybody sing. He said, "Sing all. See that you join with the congregation as frequently as you can. Let not a slight degree of weakness or weariness hinder you. If it is a cross to you," meaning if singing is a cross you have to bear, he said, "well, take it up and you will find a blessing." Everybody ought to sing, said Wesley. He said, secondly, sing lustily and with a good courage. Beware of singing as if you were half dead or half asleep. I told you it was applicable today. But lift up your voice with strength. Be no more afraid of your voice now, nor more ashamed of it being heard, than when you sing the songs of Satan. And what Wesley is saying is we shouldn't be more ashamed of singing lustily the songs of the faith than the way we sing secular songs. There's not a one of you in this sanctuary who doesn't sing lustily some secular song. It might be a football song. But there is some song every one of us sings lustily. And Wesley's point is, why aren't we willing to sing the songs of the faith as enthusiastically? Thirdly, he said, above all, sing spiritually. Have an eye to God in every word you sing. Aim at pleasing Him more than yourself or any other creature. I'm going to admit something to you this morning, besides what I've already admitted. I'll tell you what's disheartening for a pastor, and I know it's disheartening for a music director, and I want to say this with no condemnation whatsoever. But it is disheartening for a pastor to look out on Sunday morning when we're singing a hymn and see persons who haven't even picked up their songbook. And I want to say that with no condemnation whatsoever, but I want to be honest with you about something that disheartens me. To look out and see someone when we're singing one of the great hymns of the faith who doesn't even pick up the songbook and open it. And you say, well, preacher, I can't sing. I've just told you I can't sing. Somebody said singing is not for singers, singing is for believers. It's not about how you sing, it's whether you believe. I'm going to invite you to do something. Whether you can sing or not, whether you open your mouth or not, will you at least take the hymnal and read the words? They're powerful theologically and spiritually, every hymn we sing. Now, if you have sight problems, and I mean this sincerely, then just take that hymn and book and hold it to your bosom. And let the gift of the songs of the faith sink into you. Thirdly, I would say that music and song can be special venues of God's grace and God's love. Music and song can be special venues of God's grace and God's love. Do you remember what happened in late January 2003? The Columbia Space Shuttle, as it re-entered the atmosphere, disintegrated. Remember that? 7 astronauts died in that tragic accident. The exact same number that had died 17 years earlier in the Challenger accident. They held a memorial service 7 days after that tragic event at the Johnson Space Center for those 7 deceased astronauts. A reporter later recorded what he experienced at the memorial service, and it's quite revealing. Listen to this. Among the means of bringing comfort and peace to the family, friends, colleagues, and caring citizens who gathered that day was the power of music. This is just a reporter. At a meaningful point in the service, gathered mourners joined voices with the U.S. Air Force Band in singing God of Our Fathers. An old hymn whose words nicely fit the occasion, even though it was written in 1876. Based on a biblical passage taken from 2 Chronicles, the hymn's opening stanza echoes emotions likely to be familiar to celestial adventurers whose gaze is characteristically turned toward heaven. God of our fathers, whose almighty hand leads forth in beauty all the starry band. Of shining worlds in splendor through the skies, our grateful songs before thy throne arise. A tragic national accident. 7 astronauts die in that tragic accident. They gather in a secular venue, the Johnson Space Center, and the heart of that memorial service is a hymn of the faith, a hymn that moves everyone as the Air Force Band and the gatherers sing together, God of our fathers, whose almighty hand. Music and song have a powerful way of touching us, don't they? And allowing God to touch us. And finally, I would say to you this morning that songs of the faith serve us all our lives. I'm assured that a year from now, you won't remember many of the sermons I've preached. And my guess is you don't remember many sermons that have come from the mouths of the senior pastors who preceded me, not many at least. But you know a hymn. You know a song. There is a song right now that is dear to you. There is a hymn right now that you will never forget. There is some song, some hymn that touches you or touched you at a point in your life so that you will never, ever forget that song or that hymn. Milo Thornberry, a retired United Methodist minister, tells about the occasion when he got a call that his mother was dying at a nursing home in Atlanta. He lived in Fairbanks, Alaska, and he got the message that his mother, well up into years, was dying. He hopped onto a plane and he flew to Atlanta and got to the nursing home, and he pulled a chair up beside her bed, and he took out an old Cokesbury hymnal he brought with him because his mother loved singing. And he opened the Cokesbury hymnal and he simply started singing the first song in that Cokesbury hymnal. They'd already told him his mother couldn't speak as she was dying, but he started singing. And he got to about the second or third hymn and he realized his mother was making tones. And they were absolutely on key. This woman who was dying, this woman who could not speak when the hymns of the faith were sung, brought forth tones in sync with her husband that were absolutely on key. He said they sang every song in the Cokesbury hymnal. And she kept the tones up even though she couldn't say a word. And he closes his commentary with these words. I knew the end was very near. She knew that as well. Tears streamed down both our faces, but somehow we were ready. My mother and I had rarely agreed on anything, especially theologically. But somehow as the music reached down into the depth of both our souls, those differences really didn't matter anymore. The singing of hymns communicated when spoken words failed. There's that hymn in your life. I'd like to know it. I invite you to email me or send me a note, and if you email, copy it to Jim Thrash. Let me know the hymn that has touched your life and why. And here's my pledge to you. If you will send me that hymn and send me a synopsis of why that hymn or that spiritual song has made a difference in your life, we'll sing that sometime in the months ahead. If it's a hymn that matters to you and has touched your life, I want to know that hymn. I'd love to know your story. And in the coming many months, we will sing those hymns. For I believe there is a hymn in your life that matters greatly to you. I'm a musical mess. But I give thanks to God for the power of music and song. So I remind you this morning, God's people have always sung. We Methodists certainly have always been a singing people. Music and song serve as special venue for God's love and God's grace. And songs of faith, they will serve us all the days of our life. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our hymn of dedication this morning is hymn number 438, Forth in Thy Name, O Lord. As we sing this hymn, should there be persons in this fellowship who have not committed your life to Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, and who